Hello everyone and welcome to an extremely bright, very snowy day in Colorado. I'm Chase. That is the 2024 Subaru Crosstrek Wilderness.
And I'm Jobe, and this is the 2024 RAV4 TRD Off-Road.
And this is the Overrun.
All right, before we jump into all the little bits and pieces of each of these cars, let's just have a brief overview of what both of these offer. I'll go ahead and start off with the Subaru Crosstrek Wilderness. Chase actually reviewed this car a while ago, so we're not going to go too into the weeds with everything, but there are a couple of key things to know. First and foremost, with this specific Subaru Crosstrek, it comes in at just over$35,000 with some options. There are three options on this Crosstrek specifically. There's a 10-way power driver's seat, so you get some additional adjustability with the driver's seat. There's a Harman Kardon sound system and a power moonroof. But other than that, that's practically not really a ton, and the base MSRP of the Subaru Crosstrek Wilderness is $32,000. It's just below $32,000, but practically $32,000.
And what is your aspect?
Aspect is 35.5.
Okay, so mine is a lot more. This car in front of you is $41,725. Now, it's worth noting that the RAV is in general and on the whole a larger car, so it's important to keep that in mind when we talk about pricing. Now, with that said, this also has some options on it, and there's a good number of them. For starters, we have 50 state emissions, which is probably a good thing. That's not an option, but it's there. There's the TRD off-road technology package, which is front and rear parking assist with automatic braking, wireless charging, and then there's the off-road weather package for $1,015. That's a little bit more important. That's got the heated steering wheel with the perforated, heated, and ventilated front seats, rain-sensing wipers, and the de-icer function. There's also a digital rear view mirror with an integrated garage opener, and MSRP is $38,095. So the Crosstrek Wilderness does undercut it, but obviously it's also a little bit smaller. Okay, let's talk powertrains. I'm going to start with the RAV. Let's start with fuel economy as well. So the EPA rates this at a combined 28 mpg. We are just a little bit shy on this. I think we're at 27.7, but you're right around there. It's really efficient considering the all-wheel drive system. This is Toyota's ubiquitous 2.5 liter inline four-cylinder. Here it makes 203 horsepower and 184 pound-feet of torque, and that is hooked to a, 8-speed automatic.
Cool. And then for the Crosstrek, we have the same 2.5 liter boxer four-cylinder, which produces 182 horsepower and 178 pound-feet of torque. In terms of fuel economy, it says 27 miles per gallon combined, so across highway and city. In reality, I think we're actually closer to like 23. Then again, I've also been honing it, and presumably the other journalists that had this car before I did probably did the same.
Yeah, this was a launch car, so it sat idling. The telemetry in there is probably pretty far off.
Also, if you're doing off-road or snow, obviously destroys the fuel economy.
Absolutely.
So keep that with a grain of salt. If you're driving this in, good conditions, whatever, you probably get closer to what Subaru is saying. But yeah, overall, I think it's a...
And that's a CVT, right?
Oh yeah, and it's made it to a 6-speed CVT transmission, automatic transmission.
6-speed.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk interior space. Like I said, there's a lot of TRD differences in here. The big one is the seats. These are very heavily bolstered, and there's also some nice TRD embroidery, that's the word, on here with some orange stitching, and the orange accenting kind of continues throughout the rest of the interior. There's some down here on the optional wireless charger, and then there's some around the rim of the cup holders here, which are extremely deep, and then there's a bit on the dash as well. Interestingly, there's none on the wheel. This is just black thread. The wheel is pretty thin as well. There's good access to controls. I have pretty much everything I need. There's also no blank buttons, which is kind of nice. And the climate controls are nice and physical, which is outstanding. Now, this is a refreshed RAV, which means it also has the larger screen. We're going to go ahead and power the car on here so you can see it. Wait for it to stop beeping. While we wait, it's worth noting that there's also a pseudo-digital cluster that you can kind of toggle through a few menus on. You can see some various parameters, including your four-wheel drive split when you throw it into some of the, all-wheel drive torque split when you throw it into a few of the different drive modes. Now, with the center screen, this is significantly improved, I think, over the Subarus. It's just a newer, nicer, cleaner screen. There's also wireless CarPlay and Android Auto, as we can see. Let's hope it doesn't start immediately playing copyrighted media. And you can make the screen full screen if you would like, and do all of the normal Android Auto things. Now let's move in back and check out what it's like for passengers. Because I forgot up front, because I am over caffeinated, let's also go over connectivity real quick. There's a USB-A up front that can be used for data streaming or charging, so you can wire your Android Auto or CarPlay if you prefer, which is very nice. That means the wireless charging pad can be toggled off. I prefer to use it wired, so that's always nice. There's also 2 USB-C ports down here, and then in the center armrest console you'll find 2 as well. It's worth noting there's also some vents down there. I feel like I have good room. I'm sitting behind myself. Again, usual short king disclaimer. I'm like 5'6", 5'7" on a good day. Here, now I'm 5'7". I have plenty of room. I have a good amount of headroom. There's also a little bit of a cutout here in the roof so that taller people can fit. I think these seats are pretty nice. They recline just a little bit. You can raise them up, etc. There's good room. There's really no drop off in materials quality either, which is super nice, because at a lot, or in a lot of crossovers, you might expect to see, you know, really crappy materials in the back seat, and there's really no change, which is very nice. Okay, let's talk cargo. Now, the first thing that you'll notice is obviously that the liftgate is powered. Not so on the Crosstrek. That's where some of that extra money is coming from. You can see we've got the usual Overrun filming repertoire back here. We've got my bag and my camera bag. There's also just a touch of underfloor storage. Kidding, that's the wrong car, my bad. Anyways, there is a little bit of storage back here and a net. We've got our GoPro case back there. The other thing that's worth pointing out back here is that these are lined, the backs of the seats, which is very nice if you want to put dirty dogs, gear, etc. back here. There's significantly more room back here than the Crosstrek for obvious reasons. This is just a larger car. There's going to be more room up top. And that's pretty much it back here. Oh, there's also a 120 volt on the side if you need to power an air mattress or charge something or whatever.
Now that Chase has told us all about the interior of the RAV4, let's go ahead and jump into the Crosstrek. Well, I'm already here, but now you're in the interior of the Crosstrek as well. So let's start with this power seat. As I mentioned before, one of the options on this car is the 10-way power seat, which is nice. I think in terms of the seats, they're pretty comfortable for the most part. They use what Subaru calls StarTex, which essentially is this leather and sort of, I don't know, kind of perforated cloth-ish material, so it's kind of a dual material seat. When it's cold outside, it's pretty nice and it's fine, but as Chase mentioned in the original review video of the Crosstrek, when it gets hot, so do the seats, and so they're not really that comfortable. And unlike the RAV4, there are no ventilated seats in the Crosstrek, which, you know, makes sense. It's also much cheaper, but there are heated seats, which is nice, and they do work really well, and I tested that earlier today. But anyways, moving on here, let's talk about the steering wheel. There are a ton of buttons on the steering wheel. There's all your controls for the adaptive cruise control, some multimedia controls, and your voice assistant, whether you're using Subaru or Siri if you're connected to, you know, CarPlay or something like that. And then for the dash, unlike the RAV4, most of this is actually analog. There is a small digital screen here, which is pretty configurable, or not configurable, but you have a bunch of different menus that you can switch through that show you songs, tire pressure, different, you know, fuel metrics that you might want to know. But overall, it's not very, you know, it's pretty basic, but it does work really well, especially for adaptive cruise control. Whatnot, it shows you all your speeds and what you need to know. Now let's go ahead and talk about the infotainment system, which is probably the worst part of the Crosstrek. Navigating with Apple CarPlay is fine. It seems, you know, responsive enough. You can go in and out, do all the normal Apple CarPlay things. But once you go into Subaru's actual menus, it's really not all that responsive if we're just going through some settings. It takes a minute to load, and I don't know, the touchscreen just doesn't seem as responsive as the RAV4, just a lot of other cars that we have tested recently. But it does do the job. It is kind of nice to be able to change your drive mode up here at the top, and you can see some other information like weather, but you can actually change your drive mode without having to exit out of CarPlay, which is pretty nice. And then the other last thing that sucks about this infotainment is all of the climate controls, or most of the climate controls, are baked into the infotainment, which is kind of annoying. And you can especially see the lack of responsiveness here. There's quite a bit of delay between what my finger is doing and what the screen is actually showing. So Yeah, overall, the front, in terms of material quality and everything, is pretty nice. The seats are comfortable enough, at least when it's cold outside. But again, the bane of the existence of the Crosstrek is its infotainment system. Okay, we are now in the rear seats of the Crosstrek. A couple of things I want to touch on is the connectivity. So down here we have a USB-C and a USB-A port, which is nice to have both. I forgot to mention this, but there is a wireless charger and a USB-C and a regular USB-A port up front, so plenty of connectivity in this small of a package, which is nice to see. In terms of overall legroom, I'm sitting, or this is where my seat is. I'd like to mention that I am taller than Chase, so this will be a little bit better for you guys. But yeah, there's plenty of room back here. Decent amount of headroom. And yeah, overall, the seats don't feel, or the space back here doesn't seem to be too compromised, even though this is a much smaller car. But yeah, and we have the same StarTex material like we saw on the front for the seats. Overall, there doesn't seem to be a huge material quality drop-off back here, which is always good to see. But now let's go ahead and talk about cargo space. All right, let's talk about cargo space. As Chase mentioned when we were talking about the RAV, this is not really powered at all. Not what I meant to say. It's not powered at all. So it doesn't have a power lift tailgate, but that's okay. It does have these nice struts, which when the car's new, work pretty well. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the back. As you can see, we have this little cargo cover divider thing. You can obviously just take that out if you want to add some extra space, especially if you like fold the seats down or something. We have my jacket back here. There's not really a ton of cargo space. We do have this nice floor liner down here. But overall, there's just not a ton of space, and that's kind of the other big drawback, at least in comparison to the RAV4 with the Crosstrek, is that there's just not as much cargo space. This has a more traditional hatchback design, which means that it's just a smaller car, and because of the slopingness of the rear of the car, you just lose out on a lot of that vertical space. But I think if you're going camping, and especially if you put the seats down, there's plenty of room. Especially if you're going solo or maybe with one other person, but it is something to consider, especially when there is so much more space in that RAV4. Jesus, it's like a fucking trek to get over here. Which is funny because it's the Crosstrek. Okay,
get to make one of those.
Let's go ahead and talk about design. Obviously, these cars are very different in terms of looks, but Chase, why don't you start us off with the RAV?
Yeah, I mean, they each have their own little off-road cues. The biggest thing to note on both of these is they have their own special wheels with their own special off-road tires. This is on Falcon Wild Peaks. That's on Geolanders. It's also worth noting that the RAV is sitting a little bit higher on some snow, so it does look taller. It's really not that much taller in reality. Now, with that out of the way, I think that this is a much cleaner design. There's a lot less going on the RAV than there is the Crosstrek. The Wilderness is definitely its own kind of deal. I love the army green paint. That's great. This body cladding actually doesn't change at all from a base RAV. This is here no matter what. And there's really not a whole lot else. Around back, there are some TRD badges, of course, but inside there are significantly more design changes on this.
Cool. And then for the Crosstrek, obviously the big thing that is different from the Wilderness from the rest of the Crosstrek lineup is all of the plastic cladding, especially here on the side, and obviously those Yokohama AT tires as well. But yeah, overall, this is more of a hatchback style car, which is obviously very different from the RAV. So it is physically much smaller, especially shorter. There's not a ton of badging other than this Subaru Wilderness badge right here on the side. And then these gold accented or bronze, I don't really know what color it is, but these accented gold. Yeah. And then you have these roof racks as well. I mean, so does the RAV4, but yeah. And there's some black and stickers and
some
stuff. Graphics, yeah. Overall, I don't really know what to think about the design of the Crosstrek. I do like it. I like its sizing a lot more. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you want to own a Crosstrek for the design, you know that, and you're just the type of person that would buy a car like this. But I think it looks good. And the added off-road or wilderness modifications like the extra body cladding are nice.
Yeah, I think it makes a bit of a difference. The one thing that I want to point out real quick is that on the launch of the Crosstrek, we were told that the reason for all of the cladding is replaceability. So if you completely destroy the bumper or scratch it up, it's not going to be as expensive to replace because it's not a painted part. So that's definitely also something worth keeping in mind.
One last thing, sorry, before you go.
Yeah,
there are recovery points on the Crosstrek, and here in the front, you probably can't see it, but I'll throw in a shot of it. There aren't any visible recovery points on the RAV, which for an off-road vehicle I think is pretty important. So yeah, one extra thing in the wilderness that's a little bit different from
at the
the
very
RAV.
least, they're easier to get to.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I'm just gonna do a couple gentle slides because I don't want to like rip it on camera. Oh, this is rolling. Hey, Aaron.
Oh, cut it out.
You just fuck me.
Oh, yeah, we're both on. All right, great.
Okay, so let's first, before we set off here in our little snow terrain park, let's talk about on-road. What did you notice?
I think the on-road performance is pretty good. I think the RAV4 is a little bit smoother. Not a ton, but a little bit smoother.
That's interesting. I think the RAV's ride is a little more bouncy.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was a little bit smoother than the RAV, but like so, like small.
Easy.
Like
Yeah.
overall, I
Both of
really
them.
liked driving this. The power delivery in this is much better than it is in the RAV. The
Which
power
is interesting because it's underpowered.
I know, but it just feels like you're able to actually, especially when you're accelerating out of like a stoplight or something, this feels much more punchy.
Yeah, I think that might just come down to shift logic.
Probably.
Programming
Yeah.
for the CVT and a couple of the different drive modes. The RAV Sport mode is definitely a lot more aggressive.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no
definitely.
sport mode here. Your right foot is your sport mode, which I actually kind of like.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a
also-
manual mode.
Yeah, there's also worth noting that there's some paddles. The RAV, you just have to use the but anyways, let's show you how it does in the snow. I already am able to just set off and immediately start driving. There's really
We
no
are
loss
in the
traction.
deep snow mode right now.
Yeah,
which
so
I
I've got it in the Deep Snow X mode, which does a couple different things to the traction control, including, most importantly, turning it off. Do some really low speed.
Oh,
There it hooked.
caught some pavement.
Yep.
Right there.
And then it starts yelling at you. I don't know why it's yelling at me, actually.
It's because the traction control's off.
But anyways, this is a significantly more confidence-inspiring vehicle off-road. I just think that it, especially over a loose surface, is way more predictable. We were driving them earlier back to back and kind of going back and forth. It's
Doing a tandem drift.
It's like, yeah, we were getting like no kidding. We didn't do that, Aaron.
We didn't.
It's way easier to predict what this thing is gonna do. It'll also, I'll try and show you. I'm straight right now. I'm just gonna nail it and turn the wheel. The car will just rotate naturally, and that is so much more confidence inspiring and easy to control than the catastrophic understeer I found in the RAV. I don't know that there's a ton of steering feedback. I can't really tell what the wheels are doing through the wheel.
Yeah, I can't
right now.
either.
I can't.
Yeah.
I do wish that these had some deeper bolsters on it.
Yep.
My back is sweating already. That's because we've been in the sun, but also my back is sweating. I run a little hot. I'm a Colorado boy. I think that this is great off-road. I really just, I have almost no notes. I guess CVT, it's kind of groany on the highway,
Yeah.
right?
I really wish they offered this with a manual.
Yeah,
would
what
be-
happened to manual Crosstrek, man?
Yeah.
Manual Crosstrek Wilderness.
Yeah, that would
Please.
be amazing. That would fix the biggest problem with the driving experience of this would be the transmission.
Crosstrek STI, please?
Oh, I had a whole, when I was driving this yesterday, I had a whole thought
whole
about
moment,
that. But then I
yeah.
realized that Subaru hates the US market and won't bring the STI back probably.
Or anywhere. But
Did-
that's not the point. We're
Yeah.
gonna go drive the RAV.
All right, now we're in the RAV4.
On-road, what do you think?
On-road, I thought it was really smooth. Overall, I think it's a pretty decent driving experience given what's in the kind of the competition with this. I drove the CRV late last year and I absolutely loved it. It was super smooth, and I don't think this is as smooth as this. So if you're looking at other SUVs that this directly competes with,
Or more directly.
especially in terms of sizing, I think that there are other better options. And the CRV was also cheaper, and was a hybrid, so it got better fuel economy.
But this is the off-road one.
But this is the off-road one, so that's not really the point here. But on-road, I thought it was just fine.
Yeah,
I don't like the assists as well. The assists work fine. It's the way that they're laid out in the menu. The menu is really small. But
Yeah, you do have to kind of squint to get into a lot of the...
yeah, especially when
Which
you.
is funny because the Subaru screen is like way smaller.
Yeah, but it just the way that they've designed the UI in the Subaru is much better than the way that they've done it here. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and turn off traction control and engage snow mode.
Oh, don't forget the sand mode too, because that's what actually kills
Oh,
it,
okay,
right?
hang on, let's move it around.
And then, wait.
Mud and sand.
So it's worth pointing out that you also have to hold the traction button again. We figured this out earlier to like actually get it off, which is kind of strange.
Okay. That one actually wasn't that bad.
No, that one it's also starting to melt a little bit, which is worth pointing out.
Yeah.
The RAV did get stuck just now.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Just a few minutes
when we were moving the cars around, the RAV got stuck.
So I can't do 6 slides in this thing like Chase.
It's just, oh, there it goes.
Kind of goes, but it really restricts a lot of the power. Especially when you're on these, different terrain modes, it really restricts the power, which is unfortunate because then you can't do fun stuff like this. But
yeah, you can feel it like either pulling timing or pulling throttle input out.
Yeah.
And just slowing you down. The Subaru gives you none of that.
Yeah, because when I was driving this around, with the Subaru, if you put your pedal to the floor,
you get everything. Yeah.
But with this, you don't always get that. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. I think it really just depends on how much traction you have.
I'm grateful for the bolstering right now.
Yeah.
These are much better seats.
Yeah, the seats are much better in here, and the leather material is also really nice. I'm not a huge fan of that StarTex material, just in general. It's also just like not that comfortable. It feels kind of like...
We have to get it dirty.
Yeah. But crucially, this interior, these seats are not waterproof like the Crosstrek is.
Yeah.
But one other thing I wanted to touch on was the steering. Much like the Crosstrek, I can't tell what's going on here at all.
Idea.
Maybe even less than the Crosstrek a little bit, just because the Crosstrek steering is a little heavier, which, as we all know and has become a meme, I am a sucker for heavy steering.
So weird.
I love it, but yeah, there's no other real notes. Unfortunately, because of the ginormous blizzard that we got, we weren't really able to take this thing to any trails to see how it would compare or compete with the Crosstrek, but hopefully this run in the 8 inches at least of snow is enough to give us a good idea. And I think that the RAV4 does pretty well in the snow stuff. I just wish it would give you 100% of the power when you request it rather than not, and sort of gatekeeping the power behind the traction control programming. But overall, it does just fine. Yeah,
I think the bottom line is the Subaru is more fun to drive on a loose surface.
Yeah, absolutely.
The RAV does it, but like if you want to like have fun on a loose surface, there's one that's built by rally car people.
Yeah.
And there's one that's not.
Yep. And it's very easy as soon as you start driving to figure out which one was built by you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Awesome. With all that, let's go ahead and wrap this sucker up. Okay, let's go ahead and conclude our thoughts on these two off-road vehicles.
And more importantly, pick a winner.
Yeah, there has to be a winner. There are no draws here with the Overrun. There is a clear winner, and it's obviously the one that I pick, which is the Subaru Crosstrek. There's a couple of reasons why I like the Subaru Crosstrek over the RAV4. For one, when we've been driving it in this pretty deep snow, the Crosstrek has been, has just driven much, much better. You can get off the line much faster, even in this type of terrain. And also, it's just fun to drive. We did, both Chase and I did a bunch of slides up here. So if you're the police watching this, we weren't here. But anyways.
There's a statute of limitations,
There's a statute, it should be.
We just have to upload it 5 years from now. We'll see in 5 years.
But yeah, overall, I really, really like the Crosstrek. The only thing is that infotainment is absolutely awful.
Yeah, it's not good.
And the cargo space is lacking. So I think it really just depends on what kind of buyer you are. If you need the extra cargo space, but with a little less off-road capability, I think the RAV4 is a great option. But if we're talking about pure off-road performance, which is what these cars are being marketed as, I think the Crosstrek is the very clear and obvious winner.
Yeah, I mean, I'll play devil's advocate here for a little bit. I think that there's two buyers here. I think if you need a little bit more space, the RAV certainly justifies an increased cost with that and significantly better infotainment. I totally agree with you. The Subaru is way more competent on loose surfaces. You can definitely tell who's won a few World Rally Championships. Toyota cheated like once and then gave up. It shows. It really does. That said, I think that the RAV is also a little bit nicer. I just don't know that the price point is justified by how much nicer it is. I agree with you. The seats are a little bit better in the RAV. They're much more supportive. However, the ventilation just like doesn't work.
No.
I like have turned it on and then driven for 10 minutes and then looked down and gone, didn't I turn those on?
Yeah.
It's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Historically, for whatever reason, American automakers are just better at ventilated seats. That's the case here. So you can knock a couple dollars off by skipping the ventilated seats, but still, I think that our winner here is the Crosstrek.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the money, for what it's for. If you're gonna go off-road,
buy a Crosstrek.
Buy a Crosstrek because the RAV will just understeer.
Yeah, and then if you are looking for something bigger, there's also the
Outback Wilderness, which is just a little bit more money. And in fairness to Toyota, maybe would have been a little bit more straight up of a comparison. However, Aaron at Subaru was kind enough to hook us up on extremely short notice.
Yeah, so thank you.
Yes, thank you, Aaron, on our way out now. We really appreciate it. Toyota, if you want to have this back with an Outback, we will always do more testing. Yeah. So with that in mind, thank you guys so much for watching our very first comparison test. We hope that there
it's exciting.
Very many more.
Good job.
Hopefully.
That
was an
horrible
high. Come on.
There we go. What is, okay.
We need a couple more.
Stop. But anyways, if you enjoyed this comparison or agree or disagree with us, please let us know in the comment section down below. And of course, as always, please like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. And with all that out of the way, we'll catch you in the next time. Bye.